audible?
Sure.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Captain, why did you join the session late? What happened?
Yes, I was doing something as I forgot.
Okay, no problem. All right, so I said earlier that the nervous system is a branch in biology. It's one of the important topics that you have in biology that has to do with the perception of stimulus. It's traveled down to the control center or to the brain, and then from there it sends out of information so as to take a proper action. So now from here, the nervous system is the master controlling and communicating system of the body, and it controls and coordinates all essential functions of the human body. So this is a diagram of what we are trying to relate there. This is the human body. Here you have the brain. Here you have the spinal cord running down, and then you have all these nerves branching into different regions of the body. So the brain, the spinal cord, those two constitute the central nervous system. You have the ganglia here, which is the region where you have the what's it called now? The cell body of a sensory neuron fiber, and then you have the nerves. So all those blue areas there are the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so we'll get to understand the picture more better as as we progress in the lecture. So just know the function of the nervous system and the what the controls and the coordinations. So what are the functions of the functions of the nervous system? So one thing is that you have the sensory input, you have the center of integration, and then you also have the motor output. So the sensory input is the aspect that helps in gathering information, and this is important to monitor any changes that may have occurred inside or outside the body, or any changes occurring inside and outside of the body. So the sensory input, very important, which helps in gathering of information. And also the integration center, that is the part that's able to process and interpret the sensory input and then decide if action is needed. Okay. And then you have the motor output segment, which is basically response to stimuli. It helps in activation of muscles or glands for an appropriate action to whatever the stimulus you may have received or the sensory input. Okay. So usually the integration center is usually we call it the eye modulation center. The brain or the spinal cord are the ones involved in the in integration of messages or stimulus received. So when I mention stimulus, I mean changes in your environment. And this environment may be internal environment or external environment. Okay, are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when I mention stimulus, I mean changes that occur in your environment, like changes that occur in the environment. So remember that these changes may have occurred probably in the internal environment or the external environment. So any of these changes are referred to as stimuli. Okay. So now these are classifications of the nervous system. So you have remember this diagram. We are still following this diagram here. So the central nervous system involves the or includes the brain and the spinal cord. As you've seen here, this is the brain and this is the spinal cord. And then the peripheral nervous system is at the nerves outside the brain and the spinal cord. So as soon as we move out of this brain and spinal cord, which is central nervous system, every other thing you have there make up the peripheral nervous system. You see, those blue markings, are the peripheral nervous system. Okay. Now, talking about the peripheral nervous system, there are two important divisions that you need to know. There is the sensory or afferent division, and there is also the motor or the efferent division. We're talking about the sensory or the afferent. So they are basically the ones that carry information to the central nervous system. Okay, these are the nerves, or let me say the afferent fibers. They are the ones that carry information to the central nervous system. So that is one of the divisions of the peripheral nervous system. And the other division you have is the motor or the efferent division. So these ones are able to carry impulses away from the central nervous system to the to the to the effector organs or the glands. So just remember that this motor or the efferent division are the actions. They are the ones responsible for the whatever the actions that you may want to take after receiving a well processed information from the brain. Okay, so this one is from the receptors. So this sensory or afferent division are actually from the receptors. There are a lot of receptors in the body. So as you've seen here, sensory receptors, which are basically sense organs. If you have to mention the five sensory organs you have in the body, you have the eyes, you have the nose, right? You have the skin, you have the hair, and what's the last one? Who can tell me?
Tongue.
Thank you, the tongue. So all of those things are responsible for receiving stimulus. They are responsible for receiving stimulus. So they are, all the sensory organs or sense organs, they have aggregations of sensory receptors. So for example, in the eye now, you have a lot of photoreceptors that are able to receive light perception or light stimulus. So once the stimulus is being detected by the receptor here, it gets to the sensory input. What's that sensory input here? The sensory input is the sensory or afferent division of the peripheral nervous system. So that takes the information, you see this blue segment, and then takes it to the brain. This is the brain here. Let me adjust this one. It takes it to the brain. This is the brain, which is the integration center, where you have this yellow markings there. And remember, the integration center may involve the brain or the spine and the spinal cord. And then as soon as it passes through the brain, whereby the stimulus is being processed, you have an information being passed out that goes to the motor output. Then from the motor output, it's those the motor output we are talking about here is actually this motor or efferent division. So which involve the somatic and autonomic nervous system. Somatic is what you can control. That's under voluntary action. And the autonomic is what you can control. That's involuntary. So those are still under motor division. Okay. So from there, it's sent to the effector where something you can control. Now, if it's a muscle, you can control it. But if it's something like a gland, if it's gland, gland's secretion is not what we can control. So those will be under the category of autonomic nervous system, which is under the motor or efferent division of the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so let's continue. So the autonomic said it is the involuntary branch of the peripheral nervous system, and it consists of only motor nerves divided into two divisions, so sympathetic and parasympathetic. You must know that this is these are the divisions of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so sympathetic division, that's the area responsible for fight or flight response. Okay, and the parasympathetic division, that's for housekeeping, basically responses that you don't need to be agitated, or you don't, let me say, the way this parasympathetic is just at a rest state. It's not a case whereby you are agitated, or you are being scared of or something, whereby you have to fight or flight or something. So just consider this parasympathetic as the opposite of sympathetic. In sympathetic, there are a lot of things that happen there. While in parasympathetic, take it as the reverse of sympathetic. In parasympathetic, it's just in a rest state, in a resting state. So now this is these are divisions of the parasympathetic, the peripheral nervous system rather. So you can see how they are divided. Under the peripheral nervous system, you have the sensory or the afferent division, and then you have the motor or the efferent division. And then the motor divides into the autonomic nervous system and the somatic nervous system. And the autonomic further divides into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay. So the central nervous system include the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Include the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It should be noted that there are 12 cranial nerves and there are 23 spinal nerves. 12 cranial nerves, 23 spinal nerves. Is that 23? Sorry, 33 rather. 33 spinal nerves, 12 cranial nerves. So that makes a total of 45 peripheral nerves. So there are communication lines between the central nervous system and the rest of the body. That is where they function. So the sensory or afferent division of this peripheral is basically in the condition of in conduction of impulses from the receptors to the central nervous system, as earlier mentioned using that diagram. And the motor conducts impulses from the central nervous system to the effector, which are the muscles and glands. Talking about effectors are the actual sites or actual organs that take a specific action based on the information they've received from the integration center. So the autonomic conduct impulses from the CNS, that central nervous system, to cardiac muscles, smooth muscles, and glands. And then somatic conduct impulses basically to the skeletal muscles, which are the muscles that you can willingly control. There are three categories of muscles which you should know: skeletal, cardiac, smooth. So cardiac and smooth are under autonomic. They are not what you can control. However, skeletal is what you can control very well. And for glands as well, you can control them. So for parasympathetic, which is a division under autonomic, it's basically uh, at rest. It's function. It promotes functions during rest. So which implies that it's able to conserve energy. And for sympathetic, mobilizes body system during activities such as fight or flight. So it is important to know all these divisions. So now these are the these are the still under the central nervous system, the neurons. You should know that the neurons are microscopic. They are microscopic nerve cells. You don't call it neuron, you can call it a nerve cell or a nerve fiber. Okay, are we together?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So they make up the brain, the spinal cord, and
Yes,
the
sir.
nerves. Okay, they make up the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. Okay, so this is the neuron. Let me see if I have a better. Okay, I still have a better diagram ahead. So let's briefly talk about the structure of the neuron. So each neuron contain it contains cell body. This is the cell body here. This circular structure. And inside the cell body, you have the nucleus. This is the nucleus, which is what you see here. Okay, and you do have some what's it called now? Small structures within the cell body. That is the mitochondrion, which is what you see here. And you remember the function of mitochondrion from cell biology. That's for production of energy in form of ATP, energy generation site. Arising from the cell body, you have these dendrites, which are uh, tiny projections arising from the cell body. So those are the dendrites. So you can see the dendrites there. the fibers that receive messages from other neurons. Those are the dendrites. See it here, see it here. You also see it here as well. And therefore axons, that's fiber that send messages to other neurons. This is the axon here. As you move away from the cell body, you go straight down. That's the axon, and then at this point, it terminates into uh, axon terminals, which are what you see here. These extreme ends, you have the synaptic knobs, this swollen end here of the axon terminal. So that synaptic knob is meant to contain certain chemicals called the neurotransmitters that help in further conduction of impulses from one neuron to the other neuron at a particular junction. So we see this cell body here. When the impulse is being conducted via the dendrites, it gets through the cell body. As it moves through the cell body, it then moves down through the axon. And then as it moves through the axon, you see it going down there, and then it comes there and then distributes to the axon terminal, and then to the synaptic knob, where it causes the secretion of the neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters are actually contained within tiny sac-like structure called the vesicles. So from there, the neurotransmitters are released. Anyways, don't let us go further into that. So you see some sheet that wraps around the axon. This is the axon here. You can see it very well. But you see all this tiny, this blue something wrapped around it.
So I can't see your screen.
Can anybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Who is not seeing my screen? Nima will not see screen. Check your network very well if it's well connected. So these are the myelin sheets. The myelin sheets wraps around the axon. And the function of the myelin sheet is that it helps in speeding up the rate of conduction of impulse. Impulse is conducted via the dendrite to the cell body, then from the cell body to the axon. And function of this myelin sheet is that it helps the conduction of impulse to be at a higher rate. So impulses can be conducted at a faster rate, okay? So you have the node of Ranvier there, which are in between the myelin sheets. You have the interruptions there, interruptions between the myelin sheets there. So that's the node of Ranvier. And the Schwann cell. The Schwann cell is just the center point of the myelin sheet, okay? So the synapse that I talk about, where you have the neurotransmitters contained within vesicles, and then the axon terminal, which is projections arising from the from the axon, or let me say branches from the axon. So from there, they are able to connect with other neurons, and then there is continuation of electrical impulses. So continuation of electrical impulses. So axons, fibers that send messages to other neurons. Very important to note. So this is the synapse, as you can see here. So this is the synaptic knob I was saying the other time. You can see the vesicle here containing neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that help in transmission of impulses. So this space here is what you call the synapse, where you have two neurons meet. That this is the synapse actually, where two neurons meet, and then this space here is what you call the synaptic cleft. So, and then you have some receptors there. As soon as the vesicle here, okay, this is the stimulus. The stimulus arrives there. It has caused this one to release the neurotransmitters, which are chemicals. So it comes out here and then go into this place and bind with certain receptors on the other neuron on the other side for further continuation of electrical impulse transmission. So synapse. Neurons do not touch. It is important that they do not touch. There's a gap between them called the synapse, okay? Actually, we are going to refer the space where they meet, where two neurons meet, as the synapse, while the space in between them or the gap in between them as the synaptic cleft. So messages are sent across the synapse by special chemicals called the neurotransmitters, as you've seen here, and the use of neurotransmitters causes an electrical current. So it is that. So classification of neurons: sensory or afferent neurons. So those was whenever you see sensory, just know that it is connected to. Can anybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
I don't know why some people cannot.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So wherever you see sensory, just know that it's same thing as afferent. And wherever you see motor, know that it is same as efferent. So sensory are still connected to they are connected to sensory receptor. So if they are connected to sensory receptor, they are able to draw information from the sensory receptor and then take it down to the central nervous system, which is the integration center. So they carry pulses from the sensory receptors. Very important to note. Interneurons, that is just an association. They are connector. They are found in between sensory and motor. And the motor carry impulses from the central nervous system. Also refers to as the efferent. Okay. So now talking about the central nervous system. It's composed of two major interconnected organs, the brain and the spinal cord. So these organs they work together to integrate and coordinate. Remember, I mentioned that these two are the coordination center. They are the integration center. They are responsible for higher neural functions such as memory, learning, and emotion. So, and they work together to integrate and coordinate sensory and motor information for the purpose of controlling various tissues, organs, and organ systems of the body. Integration center. Very important. So, still talking about the central nervous system here. This is the brain. Weighs about 3 pounds in adults. So, it has about 75% of water content, 20% of oxygen. Okay, 20% of oxygen. And it contains over 100 billion neurons and controls bodily functions and interactions with the outside world. And it has four parts: cerebrum, diencephalons, brainstem, cerebellum. Well, in our biology textbooks, we might see cerebrum, cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. So we'll see these ones are still, how should I put this now? When we unfold some of these terms here, you get to know better where medulla oblongata falls in and where, yeah, let's see as we progress further. So this is the brainstem here. So that brainstem, which is what you see on this number 3 here, that's where you have the medulla oblongata falls in. So brainstem made up of midbrain pons and medulla oblongata. The function of the midbrain basically is involved with visual reflexes. That's the midbrain. This one is responsible for visual reflexes. Pons, that is responsible for control certain respiratory functions located between the midbrain and the medulla oblongata. And then for the medulla itself is the center that regulates heart rates, especially lung functioning, swallowing, coughing or cough reflex, vomiting, and also sneezing. So medulla oblongata is able to do that. So heart rate, lung functioning, swallowing, coughing, vomiting, and sneezing. Pons, certain respiratory functions, midbrain, visual reflexes. So this is the whole of the structure of the brain here. This is the whole of the structure of the brain. Okay. This whole convoluted part, or this area of highly twisted area or highly convoluted area, is what we call the cerebrum, which is actually part of the forebrain. Brain can also be divided to fore, mid, and hind brain. So this is the forebrain. Essentially, cerebrum constitutes that area. This is the midbrain here, and then the hindbrain found towards the back of the head. Okay, which is what you see here. Hind means towards the back or something. So the pons, you see it here. The midbrain is up, pons in between, and the medulla oblongata straight here, which continues with the spinal cord downward. Are we together?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So this is the cerebellum that you can see here. So medulla, remember, heart rates, cough, swallowing, cough reflexes, swallowing, sneezing as well. Pons, especially for respiratory function. So also remember that medulla oblongata also function in digestion. Digestion, heart rate, oh, swallowing, yes, digestion, heart rate, coughing or cough reflexes, sneezing, medulla. Pons, respiratory function, certain respiratory functions. And the midbrain, visual reflexes, which means that the something we call the visual. Okay, don't let us go into that. Let's just say visual reflexes. So, um, for the cerebellum now, the area that coordinates musculoskeletal movements to maintain posture, basically posture, balance, and muscle tone. So those three are very important in cerebellum. Being able to maintain posture, balance, and then muscle tone is due to the action of your cerebellum, and it is inferior to the occipital lobes. Yeah, there are actually several lobes of the brain. I don't know if we still have that in the slide, but I will see to that. If you don't have it, you may have to check it yourself. And it is posterior to the pons and medulla. That's just trying to tell you the location. So this is what you see here. Occipital lobe is what you see around here. Occipital is towards the back. So you see it inferior to that. If the occipital lobe is there, so it's inferior to it. This is sitting down here. And it is behind the pons. Behind the pons, basically, as you can see here. So that's just trying to describe the anatomical location or the location basically. Posterior to the pons and medulla and inferior to the occipital lobes of the cerebrum. Coordinates musculoskeletal movement to maintain posture, balance, and muscle tone. And then for cerebrum, located above the cerebellum. Yes, this is just the cerebrum here. It's all of these convoluted parts, as I've said earlier. All of this. So it's actually the most superior part, and it contains hemispheres, two hemispheres, with an outer portion called the cerebral cortex. So the two hemispheres are connected together by a bridge of nerve fibers that relay information between the two hemispheres. And that is referred to as the corpus callosum. So what I'm saying is that just consider this as, this is not the old brain. Oh. This is a part of the brain whereby we've already cut, like we've had a cut like this through the brain. And then you are seeing a lateral half, like you're seeing one of the halves. Imagine, okay, looking at your position now, the way you are sitting, and then you have a knife go through your forehead and then straight down between your eye sockets, through the nose, through the mouth, cutting the head into equal halves. So in that way, if you have a blade, a knife cut through the head in that manner, you're going to have two equal halves. So as well, you're going to have the brain divided into two equal halves. So this is one of the halves when you cut it that way. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
This is
Yes,
one of
sir.
the halves. So when you now have these halves, these two halves are connected together by, okay, let me say that this part of the cerebrum here and the other one, which is part of the other half, they are connected together by the corpus callosum, which is what we are trying to see here. And that corpus callosum relays information between those two halves. The halves are referred to as the hemispheres. Oh, very good. So this is consider this as your head here, and they decide to cut through this way, passing between your eye socket through the nose to the mouth, and then you cut. So when you cut that way, it makes two equal halves. This is one half. This is another half. So these are basically the cerebrum. Cerebrum are the highly convoluted part of the brain, as you can see, very highly twisted. And then you have them divide into lobes. The one more to the front is the frontal lobe. More in between is the parietal lobe. And then more towards the back, you have the occipital lobe. And then the one very closer to the hair region, you have the temporal lobe there. More to the front, to the forehead now. Frontal. Parietal, around the middle. Occipital, usually back. And then temporal, you have it closer around the head region, around the ears region here. So one on this side and one on the other side of the ears as well, left and right. So you have left, right for the two of them. So this is one half. This is one half. This is one half. All together make a whole complete brain. So the left and right lobes are each divided into four lobes. Earlier mentioned parietal, frontal, temporal, occipital. And the diencephalon, when we talk about the encephalon, that's talking about the brain. So it's the deep portion of the brain, and it contains thalamus, hypothalamus. It's important to know hypothalamus is also a branch of the brain or a portion of the brain, constitutes the diencephalon part, epithalamus and the ventral thalamus. So all of these points here, they are regarded as the relay center. Relay center. Okay, they are all still part of the brain. And then the spinal cord extends from the medulla oblongata of the brain to the area around the first lumbar vertebrae, or vertebra rather, in the lower back. So it stops at the L1, that's first lumbar vertebrae. That is where the spinal cord stops, at the back. Lumbar, if we done skeletal system very well. So lumbar is found around the lower back. So that is where you're talking about the back now. You have the upper and the lower back. So the upper, more of the thoracic vertebrae you see there, and then the lower back you see more of the lumbar there. So the first lumbar is where you have the spinal cord stops. So nerves from the peripheral nervous system extend out from the spinal cord. Do you know that this spinal cord is well protected by the vertebral column? Oh, I'm having a battery low. I'm having a battery low. Let me see how many percent I am. Oh, 10%. Okay, how many slides do we have to go? Oh, it's just few remaining. Let me just quickly show the slide. I'm having just 2 slides to go. Okay, so spinal cord protected by the vertebral column, and you have once within the spinal cord, you have the cerebrospinal fluid, and then protected by the meninges as well. So meninges are the three layers of membranes that covers the brain and the spinal cord. So yeah, someone should screenshot this image for me and send to the platform. If you've done that, let me know.
Sir, I've done it.
Okay, very good. So check that later. So layers of the meninges, dural, arachnoid, and the pia mater. So dural is the outer fibrous membrane. Arachnoid, the middle web containing the middle web-like membrane containing the cerebrospinal fluid, and then you have the pia, which is the innermost layer containing several blood vessels. Okay. So that will be the end for the presentation. Any question or questions?